about. That's in my reading road. Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Cherie Thayers. We warmly welcome the family of Private Albert Ernest Manley, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. I invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. For those that are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Albert Ernest Manley. Albert Manley was born in 1881 in Devonshire, England, the seventh of 10 children to John and Catherine Manley. After Albert's birth, the Manley family moved to Eltham in London. Known by his middle name of Ernest, Manley joined the British military and served for 12 years as a private in the Grenadier Guards. In 1908, Manley married Eleanor Castleton of Kent, and the pair lived in London. By the beginning of the First World War, however, the couple had migrated to Australia. They were living in the Sydney suburb of Leichhardt, where Albert worked for the Leichhardt Municipal Council. Albert Manley joined the Australian Naval and Military Expeditionary Force, and due to his military experience, was soon promoted to corporal. The Australian Naval and Military Expeditionary Force consisted of about 1,000 soldiers and 500 sailors who were tasked with capturing German protectorates to the north of Australia in New Guinea. The force had been created extremely rapidly, and on the 19th of September 1914, just over a week after enlisting, Manley embarked from Sydney aboard the HMAT Berrima, bound for New Guinea. Arriving in New Guinea, Australian troops took part in the seizure of key towns and German radio stations. Manley took part in the successful and unopposed capture of the town of Rabaul. The mission to New Guinea was the first action seen by the Australian soldiers in the First World War. Shortly before leaving Rabaul in March 1915, Manley contracted malaria, a disease that would prevent him from joining the main Australian Imperial Force until September 1916. Until he was able to enlist in the AIF, he served at a camp guarding German prisoners. In the period between his service in New Guinea and the Western Front, Albert and Eleanor had a daughter, Mary Eileen Ivy Levain. In September 1916, cleared of malaria, Manley was finally able to depart for the war in Europe. He arrived in France in the freezing December of 1916. The 20th Infantry Battalion, of which Manley was part, occupied Dernancourt section of the front of the Somme region of the northern France. On the night of the 5th of February 1917, while the 20th Battalion was in the process of moving to a position behind the front line, a German aircraft dropped a bomb into a hut in which some soldiers were taking refuge. Manley received a compound fracture to the skull and was rushed to the 5th Australian Field Ambulance. He did not recover from his wounds and died on the 7th of February 1917. He had been on the Western Front for just over a month. Just 6 days after his death, his brother Alfred was set sail back home for Australia after having sustained a serious gunshot wound to his spine. Manley was buried at Dernancourt Communal Cemetery Extension. Learning of his death, his grieving widow, now left to raise their infant daughter, wrote in the local newspaper, "My dear husband, Private A.E. Manley, a soldier and a man." Private Albert Ernest Manley is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, almost 62,000 Australians who died serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Albert Ernest Manley, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.